it's quite convenient that you've got what looks like a fez above your head. Because
How many Zoom meetings I've had with that there. This is just kind of the world that I've always lived in. There are no edges. Everything is just kind of at 200%. And I've always had this incredible inquisitiveness my whole life to find out what I could be capable of. I want to be challenged and I want to be passionate. Every time I'm not on the water, everything I'm doing is to get me back on the water. I think I am really hard on myself when I miss opportunities. Success happened before I left the dock. Thank you, Rob. Yeah.
welcome back to the coaching channel. And today is a special day because I'm interviewing a local legend. I'm based in Poole, in Dorset on the south coast of the UK. And this happens to be the home port of Pip Hare, international yachtswoman, journalist, coach, a person who has completed the Vendee Globe solo round the world yacht race. She's the 8th woman to do so, and she is the only British person to complete that race. And there's a whole story behind that and many other parts of her life. And today I'm going to attempt to gift Pip my perspective on the purpose she has in life. So sit back, enjoy this conversation, and I can't emphasize how lucky I feel to have Pip join me on the coaching channel.
Hello.
Good morning. Haven't seen you for ages.
I know it's been a while, hasn't it?
It must have been, what, hours? For our audience, Pip, I'll let you explain that. How come?
So Rob is actually my personal trainer. He's been working with me for 2 years now. Is it 2 years? Year and a half, at least.
Because we met during when COVID first hit and lockdown first hit.
Yeah.
Over the garden fence.
Yeah.
So I was minding a friend's house while he was away, and Pip was his neighbour, and I was swinging some kettlebells in the garden, and ended up lending you a couple of those.
Yeah.
And it went from there.
Yeah.
And so, what have you been doing this morning?
So this morning we started with a 6:30 session, and we did bench and deads. So preparing for my next race, which is in November, the Route to Rum. So that's single-handed from St Malo to Guadeloupe. And then since then, I've been looking at French VAT returns. Fascinating.
So it's quite convenient that you've got what looks like a fez above your head.
You're right. Do you know how many Zoom meetings I've had with that there?
Just stand a bit tall. Okay. Because you're a person.
Just like that.
Just like that. You're a person that wears many hats.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So there's one thing I find I'm supremely impressed by is that the rapidity with which you can change the hat and be fully focused wearing that new hat, whether it's Pip who's training at 6:30 in the morning doing deads and bench, or looking at French VAT law. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and then after I finish with you, I'm packing my bag and I'm going off to coach somebody else in sailing this afternoon. So
right,
yeah.
Okay. So what's that like? Going through multiple changes, even during one morning, it can be.
Do you know what? I think I don't particularly notice the transition because this is just kind of the world that I've always lived in. Everything that I'm doing kind of has, there's a direction to it. There's a reason for doing it. And I guess I kind of live in a world where there are no edges. There's not necessarily a definition. between days of the week, times of the day. So I'm used to the edges being blurred. And I think there is, that's a double-edged sword without a doubt. But I kind of don't necessarily notice the transition because it's all part of my world, and it's all something that I have always done. And so I guess it may look interesting or difficult from the outside looking in, but it's all I've ever known. So
okay, so and there's no kind of, if you could think of what's the evolutionary story of that skill, is there one, do you think, or is that also?
I think there's definitely an evolutionary story of it, and that is that I chose. So when I was 17 years old, I first read about the Vendee Globe race, which is the race I took part in 2020. I decided that it was a race I wanted to take part in. Although I had no reason to believe that I could or would ever be qualified or experienced enough, I just thought that's the kind of thing that I want to do. And it took me 30 years to get to the start line. And I think probably a good 10 of those years were kind of me looking for someone to show me the way, for someone to guide me along this path. And actually, by the time I reached my 30s, I realized that I was going to have to make my own path. And it's not as simple as just following a sporting kind of performance pathway. You have to create every single thing around you to enable you to do a race like the Vendee. You have to create a business, you have to create a technical strategy, a sporting strategy, a marketing strategy, all of those things. And I had no funding and no support, so I just had to do everything myself. So every single skill I learned myself and I executed myself. And I did it because I really, really, really wanted to do the Vendee Globe. And the only way I could see I was going to get there was to make it happen myself.
Right, there's a lot of stuff in there. You may have seen me just jotting things down. Why? Now, when people, so number one, you stood out in the Vendee Globe as because of the quality of your communication. This is one thing that made you stand out. You took people on board with you in terms of the information you gave back to the world at a time when no one could really go anywhere. This is the one sporting event that I was aware of that could take place, and you're out there in the wild, and the level of communication you granted us was just fantastic. And I remember watching you, I think it was coming up the Atlantic, and I've in my head, I call it the sledgehammer scene, because it just sounds like the giant with a sledgehammer swinging it into your bow of your boat as you're just smashing into the waves. And you're calmly talking to the camera, but it sounds like the whole world is shaking. So I've got to ask, why put yourself there?
I think the answer is really, once I'd actually experienced solo ocean racing, then the answer is really clear. Because for me, it presents, I guess, an enhancement of every single quality and emotion that a human being could be or could feel. Everything is just kind of at 200%. The euphoria that you feel when you're a tiny individual doing something of that magnitude in nature is incredible. But also the challenges that it throws at you are, in my opinion, unsurpassed, because the race lasts 3 months. And because the boats are so big, and because everything is kind of just so extreme. And, the fact that you're doing it on your own means that you have to step up to every one of those challenges. So it forces me to be a better human being. It forces me to take on things that I didn't even know I was capable of. But there is no other choice. There's no back out. There's no one else to help you. So you step up and you become a better human being. And I love that feeling, and I'm proud of myself when I do it. And that's why, it's still the sport for me. And I still want to challenge myself in that way. I think the interesting question, so, I mean, for me, having done it, it's really self-evident. Yes, this is amazing and I want more. What intrigues me is how the heck did I know, as a 17-year-old living in landlocked Cambridgeshire, going to state comprehensive school, that I could do this? How did I know it was the sport for me? I have no idea, other than I was a person that desperately wanted to be challenged. And I've always had this incredible inquisitiveness my whole life to find out what I could be capable of. I just think I just want to know if I could do more, if I could learn more, if I could be more. And I think I've always had that since I was a teenager, and maybe reading this one article in a magazine piqued my imagination so much. But it was interesting that I chose it. And when I did it 30 years later, it was every bit as good as I imagined it would be as a 17-year-old, which is quite unusual, I think.
Yeah, I think our imagination can be so amazing that it can surpass what actually might be delivered in life.
Yeah. And when I was 17, in 1991, no internet, no YouTube. I got my imagination from books and magazines. So I didn't even have that, ability to immerse myself in someone else's reality the way we can now, watching YouTube channels and stuff. It really was my imagination.
It's a really important message. After I left your home gym this morning, cycled back home, I passed a load of school kids queuing for a bus, and every kid had a phone in their hands. Every kid's head was bent towards the floor, looking at a world in a phone, which is very different to what you're describing. This absolute, I mean, it doesn't get any more real in terms of what you can do and what you're doing. Going back to what you said, I don't know how, I thought it was possible. I'm very interested in the why and the what and the how and the order in which they come, because it's clear you had an idea of what you wanted. The outlets came across your bow, so to speak, in terms of the magazine article. It was a magazine article, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you knew what you wanted. I think maybe then came the why did you want that, whether you knew that or not, and then you get busy with the how. What do you think about that order of things? The what, the why, and the how?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the what was quite vague, but the what was just, I want to be passionate. I want to be challenged, and I want to be passionate. And I don't just want to follow down the road because everyone else does, and that's what's expected of me. I think that was the what, or the why. Which one did we say? Can't remember.
Well, that's what you wanted. Okay. So
yeah.
Why didn't you want to follow the path of everyone else then? Why did you want this other path?
I guess because I didn't think it was enough. I wasn't feeling challenged. I just all the way through kind of my late teen years at school, I wasn't feeling challenged, I wasn't feeling stimulated, but also I just wasn't excited by much, really. I just looked around me at what was on offer, which was kind of like a fairly standard, middle class path into tertiary education. And it didn't excite me, and I wanted to be excited.
Okay, so I've got this view then of, you're one of many fish swimming a certain direction along a river, and at some stage you just turn and start swimming the other way. What's it like to swim the other way when maybe there are so many fish that are swimming the opposite direction?
It's terrifying. And I'm not actually a very brave person. I think maybe what I do creates a persona that people think is brave, but I'm not. I'm actually very introverted. Every single time I do something new, I go somewhere new, I meet new people, I go to a new country, I'm inspired and excited by it, but also absolutely terrified at the same time. And there is a part of me that, would have run away at any opportunity and just kind of gone and hidden in in a small room somewhere, and gone on and done, the more conventional path, because it wasn't so scary. But I think the larger part of me needed to know what was out there, but every single step of the way I have had to force myself to do it.
The larger part of you. Okay, so like, if you have a tree, you're the larger part is the main trunk, and maybe is it like your fear of those situations is like a smaller branch, but that's going to get taken along. Your fear is going to get taken along for a ride because there's something greater going on, which is the larger part of you.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of always been the way that I've been. I tend to the things that scare me, things that I'm worried about, I tend to push them aside if I can, and then will only end up doing it or addressing it when either it becomes a necessity or when the consequence of not doing it is worse than the consequence of doing it. Okay. But that's why I think, the solo sailing provides such an appeal to me, because I can't do that when I'm on the water. It forces me, when I'm on the water, the person I am on the water addresses every single thing that comes up head on at the time, because I have to. But when you're on the land, you don't have to. There's a million ways around it, and you don't have to put yourself in those situations if you don't want to.
But you do, though. I mean, this skill set that you've got on your boat, there's no option. You're being scared, whether you want to or not. You're doing things which are scary. We'll come on to a couple of things about the Vendee Globe in a minute, maybe, that fall into that category. But yeah, this scared path. It seems like the things that what you want lies somewhere along the path of lots of gates which are scary to open. So that path, someone might look at that and go, I don't want to do that. I'll take this path. But each gate you're opening, you're going through a level of being scared, but you survive. You endure. You carry on, and there's another gate to open, another gate. So it's almost like, I can see maybe that you're on the right path if you're doing things which scare you. This tells you you're going to get to what you want.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I was quite like, I keep thinking, eventually I'll get to, the nice flat path or the big downhill, and I won't have to be scared anymore. But the thing is, I think that's the time at which I kind of stop trying to push myself forward. And I can't see that's ever going to happen.
Well, I never forget when I asked you why once in the gym. So we were between sets of doing one exercise or another, and I asked you why you do this, and you kind of looked off to the side, and your demeanour changed, and I could tell you were just on Medallia on your boat, which would have been Super Bigu at the time, because that was the most recent boat you've been on, and I could just tell that you were just lost in a thought of wherever it was in the Southern Ocean or the Atlantic. And you gave me an answer, but I wasn't really listening to the answer. I was looking at the impact it had on that I could see in you, which was there's a place on your yacht where you're meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And every time I'm not on the water, everything I'm doing is to get me back on the water. When I'm not sailing, I want to be sailing.
Yes, yeah. You said to me once about all the choices you have on a daily basis. Is this thing that I can choose to do, will that lead me to actually achieving my goal? Does it support my goal in any way? If not, then why are we doing it? And I think you're referring to yourself and your team.
Yeah.
What impact does that approach have on your life?
I think I guess it gives me, purpose every day, in that, I kind of feel I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, which is good. And kind of really, wanting to perform well, to be on the water, but also to perform well, gives me the reason to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes 20 past 6. And and train and look at French tax and all of those things. But at the same time, it does sometimes make me, I think I am really hard on myself when I miss opportunities, or I don't deliver as much as I think I should have done. And I really struggle to justify having time off. And part of that is because, my cycle is, like an Olympic cycle. It's a 4-year cycle. And we don't get time back at the end. It's not like you can take time off and then make it up later. We are on a countdown timer to the next Vendee, and I'm super aware of it, and I don't want to waste any time. And I think that is something that I struggle with, and somewhere I probably really don't have the right balance.
Now you describe it as a timer that's counting down, and no one can press pause.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, if I could do anything, if I could have any wish, it would be just to press pause on the world for a week, probably just a week.
just a week, just 2, 3, a month. Yeah. What would you do if you could press pause?
Do you know what? I'd unfreeze all of my friends and I would spend a week with my friends somewhere really nice, and we'd all go walking and swimming and biking and laugh and eat and just really kind of embrace all of the good things in life, but without having to worry about anything else at all. I mean, that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
So when you do have moments with your friends, and obviously you can't press pause, does that then just make them even more rich and special?
Yeah, I think I think since I started my Vendee journey, which was in 2019, you know, I've had to be all in, because it wasn't going to happen if I wasn't all in. And the biggest adjustment for me has been a loss of time with and for my friends. You know, I feel like, you know, I have let people down by not being there for them. And that's been quite difficult, because, you know, through my lifetime, I've always kind of been the dependable one in the relationship. So yeah, that has been difficult. And it does mean that now, you know, I really, really value the time I spend with them. And I value anybody else giving up their time for me as well. Kind of just makes you realize how difficult it is. We all have so many things to juggle. And it's difficult to find time, isn't it?
Well, to grab hold of one thing, you've usually got to let go of something else. There's only so much you can hold. I think, so if I may give you my perspective, I get what you're doing and why you're doing it, and I'm witnessing how you're doing it. So I feel very privileged to be able to do that. I think you could compare what you're doing to like a really important interstellar mission from some sci-fi movie where, you know, someone's not going to be around for like 4 years because they're going to time travel through a wormhole, and, you know, there's going to be a sacrifice in terms of, as you say, lost time with your friends and for your friends. But I can only, and I'm not, well, I can only imagine that they are gonna, you know, they will wave you off, they will welcome you back, and they would know why you're not around, would have supreme levels of appreciation for that, even though it doesn't sit necessarily that well with yourself.
Yeah, you're right. I do have a particularly awesome group of friends, and they are so behind me, and they can see and understand firsthand what this does to me, and they're super proud. They're really proud. And we can't have everything, can we? So
no, we can't.
We'll live it up when we're old then.
So I want to move on to, so behind you is a picture of Super Bigu, I believe.
Yeah.
Right, so can you explain Super Bigu, the name, for starters, and then we can go.
So Super Bigu was the boat that I raced in 2020. She's very old. She was the second oldest boat in the fleet. So she was built in the year 2000 by a very well-known Swiss solo sailor called Bernard Stam. And she was built in Brittany and named Super Bigu after a Brittany cartoon character. So the Bigu is the name that kind of the traditional dressed Brittany woman has. And they have these crazy big kind of hats. And Super Bigu was like the Brittany version of Super Gran. So she's this cartoon character, old French woman in a crazy hat who kind of wrestled sharks and drove racing cars and stuff.
I'm going to have to find an old video or something of that.
It's really cool.
And not only was she the second oldest in the fleet, but wasn't Super Bigu the oldest boat to finish the race?
No, because Alexia had a boat that was 1 year older than me, and she finished the race as well. But so I took her on her 5th circumnavigation, okay. And the last now as well. Well, not necessarily the last, but since I finished the race, they've changed the rules, and you're no longer allowed to race boats older than 2007 generation. So that was the last time that she will ever rate as an IMOCA. and race in IMOCA events. She may go around the world again with a private owner on some sort of private attempt, but she'll never race as an IMOCA again.
Sorry, there's a police car going past, so you might hear a siren. And so for anyone that's not in the know, so an IMOCA, if you can explain that, I know it's a 60-foot class of racing boat, but
so an IMOCA is a class of boat, and it is the kind of largest class of boat that you do solo ocean racing in, and it has to conform to what we call a box rule. So if you imagine a theoretical cube of air, the boat has to fit inside that cube to qualify, and that means it can be no bigger than 18 meters or 60 foot long. The mast can be up to 30 meters high, the keel up to 4.5 meters deep, and then the beam with the foils pulled in can be, I think, 7.5 meters wide. And anything goes within that cube. And then on top of that, we have things like righting moments. So when the boat is laid down flat at 90 degrees, it has to have a minimum righting moment. And that's all kind of around safety and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's kind of within that framework. We've got designs that go all the way back to 2007 now. And we have foiling boats and non-foiling boats. So this one behind me is a non-foiling boat. So that's kind of like, if you looked at it, you go, yeah, that's a boat. I recognize that. The foiling boats have wings that stick out of the side. And those wings, when the boat's going fast enough, those wings lift the boat out of the water, and they will fly about 1.5, maybe 2 meters above the water.
It's an amazing sight to see. I think maybe now would be a good time to I'll put some video footage of your current boat, which is a foiling boat, over this video, because I think it's really important to point out that in the Vendee Globe race, the 2020 race, so you're in a 21-year-old boat, yet you are ahead of some of the foiling boats on numerous different occasions. Also, that happened again. Was it in the when you were sailing with Paul Larson?
Yes, that was.
So the Fastnet race of 2018. Is that right?
2019.
2019.
Yeah.
And again, you were leading the field, and I think this brings me on to. I've written down here that you are given a certain set of ingredients to like bake a cake, but you don't have the usual ingredients that produce a cake, yet somehow you produce a cake. And that means that you can sail a 21-year-old boat and be ahead of some of the foiling boats and draw on different aspects of your character to achieve that. So could you just tell us a little bit about your abilities there, because it's fascinating.
So I think it would be really, really easy to focus on the things that you don't have. And in 2019, I started my Vendee journey with a knackered old boat that was falling apart. No actual experience in sailing an IMOCA. Although I had loads of solo experience, I'd never sailed an IMOCA before. I'd never sailed a 60-footer on my own before. No sponsor, no funding, and no team. But, you know, I decided I was going to try and make it happen. And I just put, you know, fairly standardly, one foot in front of the other every single day to try and do something to make it happen. And I would turn up to events so down at heel. I mean, eating out of date, freeze dried, supported by my first event, I was supported by 2 friends and then 2 young people who had contacted me through social media offering to volunteer, and I'd never met them before. And you turn up at these events and you are racing against teams that have annual budgets in the millions and permanent staff of over 20. all in the same matching kit, you know, with mobile workshops, and it would be really easy to turn up and look at them and go, I can't do this. You know, how on earth can I compete against these guys? Look at what they've got, or look at what I haven't got. But actually, you can't change that. When you turn up to the start line, you have what you have. And that includes your experience, that includes your time training, that is everything across the board. You have drawn that line. You turn up at the start line, you race your race with the boat you have, with the experience you have. You have to define what your own success looks like, and you have to own your own circumstances. And it's a waste of energy to look across at someone else and be jealous of what they've got, or even be intimidated by it, because you're not them and you haven't had the same journey as them. And my journey was every bit as valid as everyone else's there. So, you know, I felt that my job was just to make the most of what I had, but also to learn so that I could take the next step if I wanted to.
I love that about owning your own circumstances. It reminds me of the Stockdale paradox, which is a story born out of American military individual who was a prisoner of war, and one of the things that helped him survive was a very strong belief that he will prevail one day. He wasn't an optimist, he was like a realist. And the other thing was that he really owned the brutal facts of his reality. And you said that about owning your circumstances. So rather than looking out at what you haven't got, as you said, because I think when we do that, we can look at what we haven't got. We're not paying attention to what's like in front of us because we're looking over there. I love that. I love that. What do you think then? What was the impact you had on the two volunteers that turned up? So they've turned up to the same venue, you know, they're looking at the same teams who've got the multi-million-pound budgets being splashed out everywhere, and they turn up to help you. Why did they turn up, and what was the impact you had on them, do you think?
So I think they turned up for two very different reasons. One of them turned up because he was looking for an opportunity to enter into that world. And those opportunities are really hard to come by for someone who has no experience. And, you know, and so, you know, for him to be invited along to an event as part of a team, albeit a down at heel team, was his toehold to the ladder, you know, his first rung on the ladder. And actually he went on to get a job with one of those multi-million euro funded campaigns on the back of that. And the other one, she turned up because she was really inspired by what I was doing. She had good skills. You know, she thought she wanted to work in that industry. And interestingly, she's actually gone back to kind of working in sail training because it's more where her heart's at. But she turned up to support me. And actually, you know, we have a great friendship now, and I'm a great supporter of her and really proud of what she's achieved. And yeah, I guess I'm as much part of their story as they are part of mine now.
So it's hard to know the impact you have. And I said this in a previous interview. You don't know what it's like to be in your wake because you're at the helm of your boat. You can have a guess, you can look at the wake and see someone bobbing around in your wake, but you actually don't really know what it's like until you're there. But you can't be there because you're where you are in your boat. So as you move through life, Pip, you create a wake, and you would have created a wake for these two young individuals. And you may not necessarily know the answer, but do you know what the impact is that you had? Do you suspect you know what it is?
No. No, because I mean, I think I very much admire those two, because they took the initiative to contact me. They volunteered their time to support me. And I think that was a really proactive thing for both of them to do. And it has helped them get where they wanted to be. And so actually, in a way, if I was to compare myself to them and what they've done at a much younger age than I did, you know, I actually have kind of, you know, a huge amount of respect for them and how they have looked around and not waited for someone to hand them an opportunity, but gone and found those opportunities themselves.
Okay.
I just created the opportunity.
Yeah, because you opened a gate that was maybe a bit fearful, you know, a gate that, so.
Yeah. But they were helping me also, you know.
Of course, yeah, of course. I think though that I can see this being the case at some level, is that there's a gate of fear, as we talked about before. You've stepped through it already, and also you're holding it open. You're going backwards and forwards through it, you know, as you prepare for your race, and you make it easy for the next person. Just like holding a gate open on the Southwest Coast Path, you know, it makes it easy. I love it when I'm on a bike and someone does that. I'm charging towards a gate.
Yeah.
And like, oh, let me hold the gate open. Thank you. You know, it's fantastic because it eases the passage through. So in that particular scenario, in that particular race, you held that gate open. You made that world accessible to them more so, and they can have a look around and see what they liked about it and see where they belong. So that's an important gift to give somebody. And sometimes with things like this, we don't realise what a gift it is because it's something that clearly you just can do. And this is why it's hard to notice the impact you have when it's something that's inbuilt, or it seems to be now anyway.
I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that.
Just let it. Here's a real coaching term. Just let it land. So let's come back to the topic of communication. So on Wikipedia, you are listed as being a yachtswoman, a coach, and a journalist. All of those things you do, I think that's communication plays a really important role. I think you're an excellent communicator and an excellent listener as well. What do you love about communication?
I don't.
Yeah, okay.
It's what's really interesting is, so okay, let's break it down a bit. So the coaching, I coach sailing,
yeah,
and I love watching people grow. I mean, I love it. I did earlier on this year. I don't do so much coaching now, but I do. You know, I dip into it occasionally because I want to keep my skills current. But also it really makes me feel good. And earlier on this year, I coached a full team. And over the 3 days, we did a regatta, and over the 3 days, they were last in the first race, and they were first in the last 2 races. And all I did was talk to them. That's all I did for 3 days. In fact, I couldn't speak at the end of the 3 days. All I did was talk to them, and they listened. And all day, I didn't touch a single rope. I just talked to them. And I just loved watching them grow so much. They did one particularly spectacular maneuver on the last day. I'm actually on film from another boat doing a little dance on the back of the boat because I was so proud. of how much they'd changed, but also watching how happy they were about it too. You know, I just love that. And so I guess I love communicating there because I can make a tangible difference. And I think I've developed, through solo sailing probably, I've developed an ability to break down complicated things and pass them on to other people in a way that they can understand themselves. So it changes every time, and I help them to break it down themselves, but understand, not doing things painting by numbers, but understanding why. And then that enables them to do it. And so that communication, I love. If somebody can't understand something, I love trying to communicate it in a different, you know, always trying to find the way that is right for that person or that individual. So there's that side of things. The writing. So I write for sailing magazines, and actually, in truth, the written word is my preferred method of communication, because I think it allows me to invest more deeply in what I'm saying. I have time to choose. So I'm a linguist naturally. I did an Open University degree in linguistics, and I love language. I love how the nuances change a whole conversation around grammar and vocabulary, and so I love the written word in that way. And I enjoy the process of writing, and because writing is slower and I have the opportunity to change it, it allows me to think more and have more depth to my communication. But in terms of actually speaking, I don't enjoy it. And if you ever have to do a long car journey with me, you will be sitting in silence for hours. We just listen to music.
That's making me laugh. Because I like talking, and I noticed that in our gym sessions.
I just don't like talking.
Yeah.
I like being on my own on a yacht in the middle of the
ocean. Okay, but I understand that the type of communication that you can love, even if it's not written, which is helping. I've written down here, creating space for others to own their growth. And this is now me. So this is part of the interview, Pip, where I'm going to offer what's called a life purpose statement. So this is from my perspective, and it's an offering, and you try to emphasize and see how it fits. And it's a mixture of a metaphor for who you're being when you're at your peak, at your best, combined with an impact that you have. And it's like a way that we move through life, this life purpose statement. So there's something about creating a space for others to own their growth. That maybe is the impact. And I've got almost too much choice of the metaphor that I might have for you. I wrote down the excellent communicator. There's the Pathfinder. I thought I had something, and then you came with loads of other words like being challenged, being passionate. I'll come back to that, but I just want to let you know that it's an ongoing process. So at the end of the interview, I will offer one to you and see how it fits. I want to ask you about Ruddergate. And if I've coined that, then I'm copywriting that. Okay, so Ruddergate. I heard that this was a difficult task on your own in a marina. This is what a mutual friend of ours said to me, and I thought, fair enough. What happened?
Yeah, but it's interesting. So to explain, On the Vendee Globe race, just after, I had about 10 days left to finish the Southern Ocean, and the Southern Ocean is the toughest part of the race. I'd been down in the Southern Ocean for about 5 weeks, pushing the boat really hard. The ambient air temperature is about 6 degrees down there, and it snows. It's pretty windy, and there are really big waves. And I was doing really well. I was lying 15th. At that point, I had 7 foiling boats behind me, I think. I mean, insane. Nobody ever could have predicted that I was going to be doing that well. And I discovered, so I had 2 rudders on the boat that point out like that. And I discovered a crack in one of them. Luckily, I discovered it when that rudder was not under load. So I discovered it just before it became catastrophic. But I had to change the rudder. I had a spare rudder on board. I had to change the rudder. I could not continue racing with that rudder. It's a difficult thing to do because you're on your own. The boat's 60 foot. The rudder's bigger than me. But also the rudder is buoyant. And so if you chucked the rudder over the side, it would just lie flat on the surface of the water like that. So in order to get the rudder to come in through the bottom of the boat, obviously there's a hole in the bottom of the boat and the boat fills with water while you're doing it. You have to orientate the rudder in the right direction and then pull it down under the boat so that it can pop up through the holes in the boat, which is quite complicated. It involves hanging a big weight over the back of the boat, 5 meters under the boat, attaching a rope to it, and then pulling the rudder down to it. Now, I had all of the procedure, all the kit and everything, really good process and all the tools and everything on the boat. And I had practiced doing it once, 10 days before the start, in the marina with 6 people helping me. And I did it in the Southern Ocean between gales, in a big sea state on my own. And I got a lot of recognition for that, because I did it very quickly and because I did it at all. But I have always felt that the recognition went in the wrong direction, because that resilience piece, and actually pretty much all the resilience around the boat and the repairs and the maintenance that I did along the way, was actually down to my technical director. It was he who...
Joff.
Yes, yeah, Joff Brown. So he's done, I think he's the longest serving technical director in Vendee Globe history, and also the most successful, which there's a lot of pressure on him. So I was his 5th Vendee Globe entry, and he's never had one that hasn't finished, which is phenomenal. And all of that is down to, having this ability to, and experience to understand every single possible thing that could go wrong and make sure that I was equipped to deal with it, in tools, in spares, in ability. And so he designed the whole system. He trained me on it. He put the kit on board. He gave me the diagrams. I was the puppet on the strings. So, yeah, and I think the interesting thing about that is so much focus was on me doing it. It took me about 2 hours. The 2 hours it took for me to do it, everyone was focused on that, and everyone was focused on that moment. But actually, the real skill and the real success happened before I left the dock, because we'd envisaged it, and because he had created and tried and got me to practice the methodology. But I think, people don't appreciate, a lot of the and I use the word resilience because everybody loves it, but actually that is what it is. It is a really physical thing when it comes to the boat. A lot of the resilience piece around ensuring you get your boat around the world may not ever be used, but it's still valid and important, and it's still a success even if it doesn't get used.
Well done, Joff, and the team for preparing you to succeed by doing all that groundwork. So you were the tip of the spear there.
Yeah.
But I think credit where credit is due. A, for you performing the task in those 2 hours, but also for Joff and the team for enabling you to be successful in that testing moment.
Yeah.
It just sounds nuts doing that in the Southern Ocean.
Well, again, there was a choice. The choice I had was to sail north off the racetrack and do it in an area of high pressure where there would be no wind and no waves. But I thought the minimum I would lose in terms of my race if I did that was 5 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I wasn't prepared to give up 5 days.
That was taking you over the 100-day, wouldn't it, marker? Because you finished in 95 days, and
so I just kind of made a deal with myself, and I thought, so where I was right on the track that the gales blow through, and I was on the back end of one gale and expecting another one about 48 hours later. And I looked at the weather files and I decided there could be a 12-hour window. I knew the wind would drop, but the big question I didn't know was how much the sea state would drop by. So I identified that there could be a 12-hour window where I could do it. And I kind of made a deal with myself and said, okay, well, I am going to stay here and wait for that 12-hour window. And if the sea state doesn't drop enough, then I will go north and I will take that hit myself. But at least I tried for the more expedient option. And that was, the decision that I made.
Well, I mean, it was one of those, because we're following you, obviously, social media. And every morning you wake up and you're like, what's going on in Pip? What's going on in the Southern Ocean today? Oh, changing a rudder. It made for great watching.
The clip that is used on every single Vendee film from everyone from that year is me blubbing over the fact from my buzzer.
That's one of the risks you take when you communicate so well with the world, Pip. Okay, right. So I could talk to you for hours, but time is not abundant today. We have to bring this to a close, and you've got things to do. So, who are you in my eyes, Pip? This is the metaphor I've got to come up with on the spot, which is not that easy. What I did love was about what you said about blur. There are no edges to your world. The clock's ticking down to the Vendee Globe. Who can distinguish in your world between a Thursday and a Sunday? There are no edges. Yeah, okay. But you're sort of blurring the edges of fear. That's one of the impacts you have. Because fear sits on a path towards on which your goal is, and it's all in line with your purpose. You choose to walk with fear. I've written down you hold the hand of fear, almost like you come on, fear. I know you're fearful, but actually this is possible. There's something about being an excellent communicator. So come on, Rob, I've got to come up with Hmm. You're the passionate linguist. Hmm. Oh, there's another thing as well. You create the space for others to own their growth.
I'm quite enjoying this because one thing I will not do is be put in a box.
Ah, so no, so like this is a really important part of this process. So if you are describing your purpose to somebody else or something about yourself, you can do that from your boat. Remember, you're in your boat, but you're not in your wake. So
Yeah.
I'm in your wake, as in
Yeah.
I know you, you know. And this is really, I think, one of the great things about these interviews is that it helps relate something that maybe you can't say just because you're in the boat and you're not in the wake. That's what I like. That's what I hope I do for people is I help them tell their story by telling them one bit they can't tell, which is what it's like to be around them.
I'm not sure I want to know.
Good. That tells me I'm on the right path then. They're good at making
Plenty of people have told me what it's like to be around me. It's not always complimentary.
Okay, got a pencil. Okay, I think you're the passionate pathfinder who holds the hand of fear and gives space for others to own their growth. You are the passionate pathfinder who holds the hand of fear and gives space for others to own their growth. And that is just one of the purposes I could give you, Pip. There are many. Okay, so that is one of the wakes coming off your vessel that you may not be aware of, but that is how I see you today.
That's really kind. Thank you.
I'm baking a cake with what you're giving me, Kit. So, thank you so much for gifting us your time and your energy. It really is a treat. Thank you for momentarily wearing your fez at the beginning of the interview.
I stepped away from it. There you go. I'll put it back on again.
Yeah, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Rob. Yeah.
Good. Well, see you on Monday for some weights. Yeah. Thank you so much, Pip. Thank you.